dad had a Lotus Elan when he was 17 years old, and I remember him telling me stories of him sort of racing around, or hooning around, I guess, in the 70s and late 60s as a teenage driver, and I got my love through him. He's been a mechanic all of his life, pretty much all of his working life, and I remember even as a kid him having classic cars. He's always been sort of tinkering with cars and sort of bringing cars home that I've been interested in, and yeah, he's obviously sort of passed on that love of cars and motorsport as well. My first car was a 1.2 8-valve Fiat Punto. It was the closest thing I could get to a Ferrari at the age of 17, and I unfortunately did stick some Ferrari stickers on the number plates. And yeah, it was kind of like my Fiat Ferrari Punto. I came straight from my Punto to buying the Clio. The colour, the condition, everything about it, it was absolutely spot on. I chose a Clio 182 really for several reasons. The main reason was cost, actually, because, or value for money. I had been looking at a lot of other cars as well, but the Clio stood out as being the quickest and the best performing car for the least amount of money. With the sort of the history behind the car, you know, a rallying history, you can go right back to, you know, the Renault 5 Turbo, and even more recently with the Clio Cup Racing Championship. The Clio chassis is a little bit better, especially this era of car anyway. And so yeah, even though the Civic probably had the more desirable engine, and the S2000 definitely was the most desirable out of the lot, but it was the most expensive. With this car, it's done 93,000 miles. Since I got the car had covered, I think, just over 70,000 miles at the time, and it felt a little bit soft. So I refreshed the suspension all round, the shock absorber suspension, and I've also changed the exhaust system for a stainless steel system, purely because the original was just falling to pieces, and this system I think sounds quite nice. Some of the owners say that they come sort of pre-rusted out of factory, so you'd be lucky to find one, you know, even 4 or 5 years after they were built, that had an exhaust that was not even slightly orange. This car, it can do 0-60 in under 7 seconds, pulling about 175 brake horsepower. That's thanks to the 2-litre engine it's got. It's got variable valve timing as well, so from sort of 5,000 RPM onwards, the car really sort of comes alive and pulls significantly harder. So it makes it very exciting to drive as well. And the chassis itself is a real hoot. It's very, very dynamic, and it has a tendency to sort of encourage a little bit of lift off oversteer, so it doesn't sort of act like your average front-wheel drive car. It's very dynamic and very excitable. It's a full-time tripod if you want it to be. I've refreshed the suspension all round, so in terms of handling, it's as good as new, and it really does feel that way. It feels as tight as it would have when it came out of the factory. It's my daily driver. It does take the role of a normal Clio most of the time, unfortunately. But I've done 3 track days in it, which have been fantastic, and I hope to do many more, including the Nürburgring. And I do, you know, occasionally go for just a random drive, you know, especially in the summer when, you know, the traffic's a bit lower, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, and the sun's out. It's one of those cars where I don't necessarily use it for a journey. It's also a toy. The things I dislike about this car are all to do with build quality. The interior is quite loosely held together. You get a lot of rattles, and the car can feel quite cheap in that respect. You know, closing the boot lid, for example, it doesn't take much more than a slight breeze, and the boot lid will just slam shut. The Clio, it sort of obviously does lose out down the straights. You know, it's not going to be keeping up with any supercars down the straights, but you know, into the corners, I'm a bit of a Banzai late breaker, and you know, through the corners as well, it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it can really sort of scare off some much quicker cars. I've had some pretty funny comments from drivers of more powerful cars, interested to see how many turbos I have. I have none. The reason I find this car so special, and the thing that makes it so sort of perfect for me, is it's not costing me much more to run this than it did my little 1.2 Punto, but I get 100 times more smiles out of it. It's one of those cars really that's very eager to always be driven properly. It's not something that just wants to sit around in town all day. The car is just an all-round sort of, you know, enthusiast car, I think, with its performance and exciting chassis dynamics. So I absolutely love it as a car guy. This car is special to me because it kind of just reflects my personality and my sort of love for driving. It's one of those things where it can be sort of my toy and my pocket rocket almost. You know, I can go out for drives and it will provide me with endless grins and smiles.